right. Well, welcome, Jim. Today we're going to talk about the kind of what I would call the foundation of our club, the Imperfect Men's Club, and all the programs that will come from it, the membership concept that we talked about, getting guys kind of into the club for short money, 50 bucks a month, 100 bucks a month, something like that, low price point, so it's easy for people. And we're going to just start with the self, this diagram that we collectively have put together over the last couple of years that started in our conversation in Florida a few years back was everything's kind of about the self at the center of the wheel, the flywheel of life, or whatever we're going to end up calling that. We keep messing around with different names. The center of the wheel is the self. And you put together a really cool spreadsheet of self hyphen words like self accountability and self awareness and self respect and self confidence. And I think you put together about 20 of those. And we want to touch on some of those today. But visually speaking, everything that we do with all of our club members and anybody that comes into our kind of universe, it starts with self-awareness and the thought that, okay, who am I? What's going on? Where do I want to be? Am I where I want to be, or do I want to be somewhere else? And if so, how do I get there? And I think that all starts with self-awareness. So, all right, where are the holes in my plan? Where are my limiting beliefs? Where are blockers? Where are the things in my subconscious from my childhood that I still haven't resolved, that are putting constraints on my happiness and my success and my joy and my productivity? And the idea that if you visually think about the self in the center of this wheel and you radiate outward, like dropping a stone in a pond, or the butterfly effect, if you will, it just radiates out. And we have 5 areas in this wheel that we've talked about quite a few times in previous episodes in no particular order: is your worldview, your health, your finances, your profession, and your relationships. Those are the 5 areas. And then we take those 5 areas and radiate out further. And just as a for instance, with your finances, it's like, do you have an abundant mindset or do you have a scarcity mindset? And then those go out from there. And those conversations can become really, really interesting. And one of the things that we've talked about a few times that you bring up, which I really enjoy, is over the last year or so in particular, you've gone to lunch or out for beers or dinner with other couples, and you've brought this up, this foundation, this framework. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you're getting some pretty strong feedback.
Oh, it's a lot of fun, but again, you also realize it applies to everybody. But a couple things that I appreciate you bringing up, and I think it's great. What are we into our second episode for 2024? It's a great time. I love this time of the year because you get a fresh, clean sheet. And you mentioned something about the club, and when we started this a couple years ago now, we spent some time. Hey, what are we going to call it? And these are origin stories that now have become something, right? But the Imperfect Men's Club, that title comes from a couple different things. One, at this stage in our life, we certainly know we're not perfect, and even though we may strive for perfection, there is no such thing as perfect. In fact, the imperfection is the perfection. It's something I remember telling my kids when they were growing up as well. The imperfection is the perfection, right? Don't be frustrated, be fascinated. But the name Men Club comes from my years of playing rugby and even traveling around the world. And I'll share this real quick story. But when I was in England, this a few years ago, I was invited to a professional game. I'd met the CEO and the manager of the club. They invited us to England to watch one of their matches, and this is kind of cool. This is old school stuff, right? But still, at one point, these men's clubs, rugby clubs particularly, would not allow women in the building. And even though that's not certainly not what's help me out with the right word, Mark. Politically correct, is that a term anymore?
Correct.
Yeah. It was pretty cool because I was invited into the men's club, and my wife gracefully, with it's all fun now. It's not that serious. She was not allowed into the club. She had to wait outside. And but it wasn't about excluding women. That's not at all what it's about. He's the most respectful gentleman you can imagine. This is in England. It was really just about when it's a group of guys, a men's club, you're going to have different conversations than if you had other people. And of course, it's a men's club. It's a drinking club. It's a pub basically, but it's private, and it's for men, and it's men of a certain interest. That's what a men's club is. So, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. In fact, I remember even going back years ago about the value of having even a men's, like a Bible study. There's a reason why you have a men's Bible study versus a women's Bible study, right? It's a different dynamic. So anyway, that's the Imperfect Men's Club. That's where the name comes from. But also something that you said about radiant thinking. Excuse me. I'm a little more comfortable with it. I think I especially on the podcast, I'm not particularly proud of it, but yeah, my brain functions very differently than most others, right? So I see things in pictures. So it's a lot easier for me to share a thought with a photograph or an image of something than to write it out or to read it. And it turns out that I'm dyslexic. The dyslexic mind, it's radiant thinking. So you start with everything. It starts with the main concept, and then it radiates out. It's kind of how the brain functions. And so I really appreciate it to really embrace that. And our whole system, and I'll share a infograph, is really based on these concepts, right? That everything, this is happening, everything in our life, it all starts with ourselves. And that, and then our thoughts radiate out into these different areas that affect our lives, especially different stages in our life. And then these 5 areas that you mentioned: health, our profession, money, others, and our worldview. Yeah. But, back to having fun with it. I don't care where I'm at, especially if you got a couple beers in you and everybody's just having a good time. Everybody's interested of talking about themselves. It's just a human thing, right? We are by nature designed to think of ourselves first. Yeah, some go too far, and you can call it self-centered or self-egos, all these different things. But I don't know if you see on the screen.
I do. Okay. I had a couple of thoughts on some of the stuff that you'd said. It made me think. It's been 10 or 15 years since I played golf at the Orlando Country Club, but there's the men's club inside the country club. I mean, it's just dudes, and there's dudes walking around naked, smoking cigars, towels around their waist, coming out of the shower. There's no women allowed in that particular space.
But there's a women's side too, right? But you're talking about the locker room. Yeah, it's a locker room
side too, and it's, to your point, I think we've both spent a lot of time in locker rooms as athletes, and a men's locker room, the conversations that take place in there, they don't take place out on the street. It's like, so I think the Imperfect Men's Club concept, to get a bunch of guys interested in self-improvement, interested in increasing their performance, those conversations are going to be fucking awesome. So
well, you're right. At the end of the day, it's about being your best self. And the best way to get there is to surround yourself with people that have the same interest, just like a club, no different than a rugby club, right? Or any kind of a club. You have a common interest and maybe a common goal, and you realize the community, your support system, surrounding yourself with like-minded people can accelerate your growth than if you were to try to do it on your own, or even worse, not surround yourself with people that don't think like you. That's almost impossible to grow if you have a different value system, or you don't want the same things. And it's not disrespect to those others that don't want that, but why waste the time and energy, right?
Yeah. It's one of the main, and because we're gonna do, like we talked about, we're going to reach out to people, see who might be interested in this self-improvement, higher performance men's club. And then, the first step in that's going to be an assessment. We're going to send out a document, probably.
But, hey, Mark, let's get right into it then, right? I don't know if you see my screen right now, but we're talking, let's start off with all the selves, and again, you use your hand. So walk you through how this is how I don't have this document in front of me when I'm with somebody, or from, I don't care if I meet somebody or talk to somebody. I do what you did. This is, I think, a year ago. You held up your hand and you said, um, "Ourself," and then there's these 5 areas. So it does start right here in the center
Yep. The
of
palm of your
yourself
hand, and then
with
each of the
self.
fingers, represents one of the 5
Right.
areas.
Yeah, and so the way I
Yeah.
describe it, I say, hey, I do this podcast, and in this podcast, we use this framework that we've developed over a period of time, but we were really, really clear on it. All starts with yourself, and
Mhm.
and no particular order, but I like to do things in fives, and the first 5 probably should be the same, but everybody can self-select what is important to them. But I think we all agree, particularly you and I, that self-awareness is probably the most important thing to start with,
Well,
as
yeah, I
far as
mean,
the self. So why don't we start with that? And I don't know if you see the stream, but you can read it. I put the a short definition, and when I say a definition, it's a short Google search of a modern definition of what the meaning of self-awareness is, and then we'll kind of have fun and we'll jump around. But this is a lot of fun. And why don't you kick off self-awareness as the
yeah,
first
I
one?
think it's what I was going to say earlier. I think that anybody that's going to join us for conversations and all the resources that we have already has to really buy into the concept of self-awareness, because
Mhm,
that's where it all starts. To your point,
mhm.
it's like, if I want to be self-aware in a moment, and I want to look in a mirror and say, okay, this is who I am, and be real honest with myself, and with the help of others in the club, and you and me kind of leading the way, we're going to kind of make people be honest and say, look, we're all imperfect, like you say, and that's why we're here at the
Well, the
Imperfect
reason
Men's
it's the
Club.
most it's the most important one, in my opinion, one is because if you're not self-aware, then you're putting out stuff into the world, um, that you either don't care about, that you're projecting out, that you don't care about somebody else, and all you think about is yourself. So just being self-aware is such a quality uh, trait in a person, right? They're self-aware of what they're saying and what they're doing. So
Yeah,
I'm just going to
yeah.
read it. The ability to tune uh, into your feelings, thoughts, and actions. Being self-aware also means being able to recognize how other people see you.
Yeah,
It's
not bad for a dyslexic guy.
that's the best thing. That's I know I was almost broken into
No,
a
no,
cold
no.
sweat trying to get through that many
Yeah,
words at one time. But
yeah, and
but
it, I think the other part of that resonates with me is being able to recognize how other people see you.
oh, it's
You
huge,
know,
huge, huge.
it is huge, and I think there's so much good that comes from self-awareness, and I'll throw in the worldview piece of it here too,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
there's so much victimhood going on out there right now. People are
yeah,
blaming other things and other people, and you can't change other things and other people. You can change what's inside of you. You can change the way that you view the world. You can change the way that you look at things, and change the way that you treat people, and change the way that you put yourself out there.
yeah.
And that
Well,
that begins the process of becoming or re-becoming authentic,
yeah. So
and
you
then
set me up for the next one, which is self-evaluation,
uh-huh.
right? Observe, analyze, and value your own actions and its results in order to stabilize or improve it. Uh, yeah, if you once you become aware of something, then you have to do a self-evaluation,
Hmm.
analyze what you're doing, and again, this is no different in any other sport or anything, right? To evaluate your performance, measure it, and then improve it. But if you're not aware of what that is, then you can't make a self-evaluation. It is, then how can you improve it? And
Yeah,
that's
you teed me up for the one that follows that. Once you figure out what's going on, then there's an exercise in self accountability. It's, how do I execute on these changes or these improvements? What are the steps involved? What's the first step? How long should I expect this kind of stuff to take? But really, it begins the process of like, okay, now I have a reality check. Now I have some ideas about where there are opportunities to improve, and I've got some recommended actions I can take. And
Mhm.
then that improvement happens incrementally over time. It's not a light switch that goes off. Most of these things, to turn them into habits, or routines, or to change habits or routines, that takes a period of time, sometimes a
Yeah.
long period of time. And my
Yeah.
experience with incremental change is, and it's like you said, it's a perfect time in the new year. Everyone's contemplating change, right? And
Hmm.
giving up alcohol, changing the way they eat, exercise regimens, all that. The reason most people drop them, there's a couple in my humble opinion, there's a couple is they don't go through the self-assessment, they don't go through the self-accountability exercise, and they
Yeah,
also
so let's
get,
talk about self-assessment, right? I'll read these out just because I think when I want to assume everybody has the same exact meaning, and it varies a little bit, but it's self-assessment, assessment of oneself or one's actions and attitude, performance at a job or learning task considered in relationship to an objective. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but anyway, I think you mentioned it in the beginning of the episode. As assessment is a really important thing. And that's something we're going to add it, as maybe a member benefit, right? That all those things we're talking about is just a quick self-assessment to
Mhm.
give you a dashboard of kind of where you're at
Well,
in your
I
life.
think it's a life, it's the beginning of a life plan, and
Yeah,
you can restart anytime you want in your life. We
yeah,
just happen to be focused on middle-aged men because that's who we are. And I think because of that, we relate more to that particular audience. It doesn't mean that women can do this, kids can do this, older people can do it, younger people can do it. At some point in time, there's no bad time to sit down and go, let me reevaluate where I'm at. Let me reevaluate
yeah.
myself,
Yeah.
and let's
And
be
so the
aware.
next one, self accountability. Take responsibility for your actions and behaviors without blaming others. Wow, that's a big one. And if it's one thing, I hate to see old people criticizing the younger generation, right? It's so as it's what all old guys do, and it's come on, so cliche. But there is something to say for we have raised a generation of Americans that just are not self-accountable. They have been either taught or trained to not take responsibility for their own actions or behaviors, and
Yeah.
I think it's a serious problem. And it is, we talk about a club, we look at it's a men's club, of course. It's just for fun, right? But it also is in that age group of guys that are serious about being the best they can, and that's typically happens in your mid 30s, and then your 40s and 50s, and then, right into your 60s. But number one, if you show me a guy that I respect and value, he has self accountability. He's accountable for his actions, and then takes responsibility. So that's
I had cocktails the other night with one of my best friends, and Miles, and we just don't get to see each other as often as we used to because life gets in the way, right? And every time we get together, whether it's a month from now or 6 months from now, it's like we just saw each other yesterday. But we were doing exactly what you and I are talking about right now, and we were doing it intentionally, and it was a lot of fun. And it just talking about life events, our kids, our girls, and
yeah.
their relationships. One of his daughters has just gotten engaged, and the guy that proposed asked Miles if he could first, like old school. And I was beaming. I'm like, dude, that must have made you so happy. And he goes, dude, it
Yeah.
was awesome. It was awesome.
Yeah, it made maybe think of something too. When you're your best self, you're also better to everybody. It's your girlfriend, your wife, your son, your daughter, the people you work with. You're just a better person to be around. And but it takes work, like everything else, and it takes
It does.
reps,
It takes
and it
reps.
takes
Yep.
measuring. So self identity is the identity that a person gives themselves. It is the role or roles that a person believes defines them. Self identity can influence people to prioritize certain ideas, beliefs, values, and actions. Yeah.
Yeah. This is a great one. I think you know, what you said about when you are your best self, you bring your best self to other people. It makes better relationships, more productivity, more success, more joy. I have been practicing this now for a long time. I could argue I've been doing it my whole life, but I really turned it up a notch in the last couple of years. And one of the programs that I'm belong to, that's what we do. You just go in there and you're just like, okay, who do I want to be? Where do I
Mhm.
want, what do I want to get? Well, I can't tell where I want to be until I can understand where I am,
Mhm.
you know, and that self-identity piece is just, there's so
Well, I think it
much.
sets up the second one, which you often talk about, and I think it's kind of cool because you're really you see the value in this. Also, this is what the world really needs and wants, and that's to be authentic.
Mhm.
So since I can't say that word, I'll let you read this one.
Self authenticity is the category.
Yeah.
An authentic self is who you are at your core. It's when your actions, words, and behaviors match your core identity.
Yeah.
That makes me think of something I used to tell my kids all the time, and to this day, like they were going through some really confusing times during a divorce, and they were getting two disparate opinions from their mother and father. And I just say to them, look, authenticity, truth, it lies where actions and words match. If someone's talking about something and then they're acting in a different way, that's not authentic. That's inauthentic. That's dishonest. There's a lack of integrity there. And the other thing about authenticity is you got to bare your soul to be authentic, and that's scary. So that's
Hmm.
some it's like doing video online, or what we're doing, exposing ourselves. When we started talking about this stuff years ago, we were both like pulled way back on our authenticity, and it wasn't because we didn't want to
Hmm.
be authentic. It's because we were scared
That's
that we
right.
were that we were going to alienate other people. And ironically, authenticity attracts people. It doesn't alienate. It alienates some people, but it attracts the
Which
people
is
that have.
fine, right? Which
Yes,
is
it is
fine.
fine.
Yeah,
It is
yeah.
fine.
All right.
Yeah,
Take the
because
next one. What's this next one? Self. Can't read that one either. What's
self-consciousness
yeah.
is a heightened awareness of oneself, especially how others may perceive one's action, appearance, and interacts with others.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can see where some of these overlap, right?
Yeah.
But it's reinforcement, right? It's reinforcement by repetition. I love the phrase that you use. It's reps, the
Yeah.
athlete's phrase. This program that I'm in about the spiritual operating system is reps, reps, and reps. And you made a comment once, because you participated for a while, that it seems like the same thing over and over again. And I'm like, well, it is.
Yeah.
That's
And that's how you get results.
that's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
But it
And I
sets up the next one. That's real. Another one. Is second. Self-control.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. Control.
Control behavior to achieve goals and avoid temptation. Ability to delay gratification and wait for a better reward or a larger goal.
Yep. Yep.
Huge.
Yeah.
Self-control. I think I shared this with you. I recognize um, that these YouTube algorithms really can take over your mind and start. You can waste an hour easily just watching meaningless videos. And I said to myself, I have to have better self-control to get sucked into that, right? So I'm
Yep.
on it's kind of like a AA program. I'm on day 11 right now. I haven't watched a single. And I'm so proud of it. I'm sharing it with everybody, right? That's
It
like
is. It's hey, look, I often think of giving certain things up or curtailing certain habits. I
yeah,
recently I gave up a couple things that I really enjoy, which are bread and cheese. And
yeah.
bread is the carbohydrate. In the absence of carbohydrates, I lose 5 or 10 pounds in like a week.
Yeah, and so that's why I like this definition. So I again, I went through a different couple ones. It was a quick search, but avoid temptation.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to show me somebody that's successful, somebody that is serious about life. You'll see somebody with a tremendous amount of self control. And
Well, I heard we watched a video the other day. I've seen it a couple times in different places, and you may have seen it as well. But one of the quotes is, and I might butcher this, but successful people do consistently what unsuccessful people do occasionally.
Mhm.
And I mean, this incremental, starting with self-awareness and then implementing all these other self hyphen concepts of accountability and control and
Mhm.
awareness and all consciousness, and it's just such a wonderful foundation, such a wonderful framework.
Mhm.
And you can take any one of these little boxes and talk for hours about it and
You
share
can, yeah.
examples.
But that again, what jumped out, I mean, this is why they're all important, but this one, but a delayed gratification, because that also is a difference between a boy and a man. A
Hmm.
boy wants immediate gratification, right? He wants to eat all the ice cream and not eat his dinner. A
Yep.
boy, a man realizes that's not, it does require self-control, and there's a, it'll affect you later in a negative way and so on. So
Well,
self-control, yeah.
pleasure without conscience is not sustainable.
It's not.
It's not sustainable. None of these things are
Right.
sustainable, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. So self-dignity, knowing your worth and acting accordingly, feeling of confidence and pride in your own abilities.
Yeah, I
So
mean that
yeah,
this one I think is, and I'm speaking for myself, but I think it applies to everyone. This is one that people need help with, right?
yeah,
Because we beat ourselves up. Our self-talk really beats up our self-dignity. At least it does for me. And
yeah,
I've started to develop an ability to say, and I think this is coming from practice. Okay, I'm talking poorly to myself right now. I'm lacking in self-dignity right now. Knock it off. And
yeah.
that is because I'm more self-aware of who
Mhm.
I am and more willing to be authentic and humble.
Yeah,
Humility is a wonderful thing.
yeah. So self accountability. Take responsibility for your actions and behaviors without blaming others.
Yep.
Uh, Another one, yeah. And then one that again is our whole program is going to eventually become, and that's a self-agency. The sense of agency refers to this feeling of being in the driver's seat when it comes to your success. But agency is a huge part of that, whether you do that as self-agency or you bring in an agent that helps you do an assessment or an evaluation, just like a coach, right? A coach that um, has your best interest for you to your performance to be as high as it can.
Yeah, I think Jim, the one of the underlying premises of what we're doing here is that, yeah, you could really work hard and do some research and reading and watch videos and study and all that stuff and get yourself to a peak level of performance. But man, when you have somebody to help you with that, when you have an agent, you have a coach, you have somebody or a group like this, your progress is just going to be expedited, and
Yeah,
you're also going to pick up little pointers because we all look at the world a little bit differently. And
yeah,
when you bring in someone that has a fairly similar worldview, they're also going to bring maybe a different way of looking at something that you hadn't recognized before. Any third party would do that. So
yeah,
the objectivity of having somebody on the outside looking in to help you, it's fascinating to me, you
yeah.
know.
I agree. Self-discipline, ability to manage one's thoughts, emotions, or actions, the ability to control one's self and work hard or behave in a particular way without needing anyone else to tell them what to do. Like I said, because some of this is somewhat redundant from one to the next, but self disciplines. If you can identify to that description better, then take that one and run with it. But yeah, what's your thoughts on self discipline?
Yeah, I mean it's I beat myself up about that. I have people who love me telling me, "Man, you're so disciplined." And I'm like, "I don't feel like I am, you know. I'm disciplined about certain things like my morning routine, my exercise,
Mhm.
what I eat. And I forgive myself when I break training. That's
Yeah.
another thing. It's like when I break training, if I'm normally going for a 1 hour walk and I only have 15 minutes, go for a 15-minute walk. Don't not go for a walk, you
Hmm.
know? And it's self-discipline for me is a daily challenge. And perhaps it is for everybody.
Oh,
I don't
I think it
I,
has to be for everybody.
yeah.
Yeah. Self belief, a sense of confidence in one's own abilities and judgment, belief in one's ability to achieve goals and complete tasks. Interesting. Self belief is complete task, right? The small things, and then you have a self belief you're capable of doing things maybe you weren't capable of. But
Yeah, I think for me, because self-belief, self-confidence, every I'm surrounded by people that have more confidence in me than I have in myself. And maybe that's true of all of us, but I think what I've had some success with recently is, yeah, okay, you don't think you can do that, you're a little scared by that, we'll do it anyway, and I
Mhm.
think that's the definition of courage, if I'm not mistaken. But it's not the absence of fear, it's operating in the face of fear. And
Well,
in
I
order
think life is a confidence game,
Yep.
and he or she that has the most confidence kind of wins. But you have to work on it. You have to build self confidence. It doesn't come from others. Reinforcement. So it's one of I like this one here. Self talk, the way you speak to yourself or your inner voice. It's a verbal expression of an internal position or belief. Self talk, the most important person you're ever going to have a conversation with is yourself, right?
Yep.
Most
Yep.
important conversation you'll ever have is with yourself. And that's a crazy person. That's it really is. But think about it. Most of the time, or let's just say our living hours, we're talking to ourselves.
Oh yeah. No, I've heard.
So
I think it was Sam Harris, the thinker, the atheist. He's a public speaker. He's done a lot of great work, and I don't agree with him on everything. But I saw him do a TED talk one time, and he started off by saying, "If we talk to other people like we talk to ourselves,
hmm
we'd just
hmm
be getting into fights with people all day long. We're
I think
so bad. We're so
yeah,
bad with ourselves,
that's
So
right. You're right.
this
You
is
get you get your nose punched off
yeah,
if you started saying things that you say yourself to other people. That's
yeah.
I think I saw that. It's great. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no question about it. And I catch
Yeah.
myself doing that to myself all the time. As a matter of fact, it's one of my when I list my worries, I make a worry list every day as part of my routine. And self doubt and self talk are always on that list. Always, they make
Yeah.
the top five every single time.
Yeah.
I think that for me, the self talk issue is like that's a constant battle for me all day long.
Yeah.
But I think if you're self aware and you're putting in the reps, probably can minimize that over time,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
just be kinder to yourself.
Yeah. Self worth. Uh, was value. What's that say?
You've got a different page up for me. I
Oh,
don't
do I?
have that one. Yeah, you rotated it.
Shit.
That's okay. Self-worth is, that's a little bit redundant as well. I mean, that's self-confidence, what you believe in yourself. I can read it if you roll it up. Yeah. Value themselves as a valuable and capable human being, has good qualities and has achieved good things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're giving yourself credit for the good parts of you, what you do
Yeah.
well. Again, see
And
how
we should be working towards our self worth every day.
every
That's
day.
your one job when you get up every day. You should be working towards that, right?
Well, isn't it interesting? It just dawned on me again that in order to work on your self-worth, you have to be self-aware that
Yeah.
that's something
It
that
always
you need
comes
to
back.
work on. It
That's
is.
kind of the beauty of this assessment, right?
Yep.
Self respect, having a sense of confidence and how you view and feel about yourself and in your relationship with others. That's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
because
I
the
mean,
person that
that's
has self respect also respects others, and that's a nice quality to have in somebody, right?
all of these self dash other word exercises make you a better person. It brings you closer to being your best self. All
hmm
of these do. And
Yeah.
it's kind of I guess it's radiant thinking,
Yeah. So it starts with
from the
self
inside out.
self gratification, the act of pleasing oneself or of satisfying one's desires.
That's a double-edged sword right there. I mean, I always I don't know who brought it to my attention first, but the distinction between pleasure and joy,
Hmm.
that pleasure is, yeah, I think we're all deserving of
But pleasure
pleasure.
can be just whacking off, right?
Yeah, pleasure is
Joy is,
temporary.
enjoying a nice dinner and a glass of wine and good company,
Yeah,
right?
good company. Yeah, good people. Yeah,
Yeah,
pleasure is our isolated incidents of feeling good, and it's
yeah,
not that we should deny ourselves some pleasure, but that's not sustainable. That's not a long-term thing.
yeah.
Joy is kind of the way you want to live your life.
That's
You
the
know?
Catholic in you coming out, Mark.
Yeah, probably.
You've been told not to have pleasure.
Yeah, I suppose
Pleasure,
so.
sin.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting topic as well, because, I think guilt is a big thing in the Catholic
Self
Church.
guilt. Oh
And
yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. We
yeah,
should put that in here. Self guilt.
yeah.
That's a thing.
But it's so interesting how things are kind of the way that you look at them. I think of guilt this way, and probably because I am Catholic, is guilt is something that comes up when you've done something wrong.
Yeah.
Now, but it needs to be automatically followed by forgiveness, right? Which is another tenet of the Catholic Church, because wallowing in guilt is terrible. But
Mhm.
guilt as a stop sign is good. But you got to put the stop sign down and move on. Forgive yourself, and learn from that experience. I see too many people wallowing in guilt. And then
Yeah, I
the other
agree.
side of that is people that aren't guilty. They don't feel guilty about anything. So both, you got to
Yeah,
be careful. You got to be in the middle there.
no question. Self-care is the practice of taking care of your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health to promote your overall well-being.
Yeah. And my 2 cents on that one, as I'm watching, as you're reading, is it's amazing. And I'm guilty of this. Physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health. How many people do you know that take care of themselves in one or two of those areas, like professionally, and they
Mhm.
completely drop the ball on one or two of the other ones, right?
Well,
I mean,
that's how we came up with those 5 areas of your life. You're
yeah,
right. You can
yeah,
be really good at one, but that doesn't mean the other ones aren't going to cost you something in your life. So no question. Did we do this one? Self-talk. The way you
yeah. We did
speak.
that one.
We did
Yeah,
that
we
one.
did that
I'm
one.
jumping all
Yeah.
around.
No,
Self-help.
I think we got most of them. Yeah, I
I
mean,
do too.
yeah,
I think we got them. Yeah.
yeah, and like I said, just for instance, I mean, self-evaluation and self-assessment are kind of the same thing, right? So,
Mhm.
well, one of the things we were going to do is kind of break this down and try to get rid of the redundancy, and from 20, maybe get back down to 10, and then incorporate them in most of our conversations, because tying
Yeah.
back into the self, it really has, in our experience here, it really has dawned on me recently how important that is. And in light of what we said earlier about the victimhood out there and the younger generation that just haven't been taught, and again, that's a generalization, not all of them, but too many of them
Mhm.
are, think it's okay to blame other people for things or blame other circumstances. And once you give that control away,
Mhm.
you're toast,
Yeah. Yeah.
So this whole thing to me, Jim, is about this imperfect men's club. Is We're going to turn this into a paid membership in the
Mhm.
near term.
Mhm.
And between you and me, we already have so many resources. And what are
Mhm.
resources? Resources are workbooks, videos, the podcast, and everything else that we're going to put together from our lives, and the things we've learned from our mistakes and the hardships we've faced. And yeah, I'm excited about the whole thing. I think once we decide to tell the world through our own email lists or our social media profiles, or just conversations like you've had with a number of your friends about what we're doing, everybody seems to dig this. Everybody seems to
Yeah.
think this is a good idea.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Now we just need to put it out in the world and for
Yeah.
others to benefit from it. So good call today, Mark. You have a
Yeah, I
great
enjoyed it.
weekend.
Yeah, you do
Uh,
the same, Jim. Thanks.
Okay. All right.